In a world where left is up and right is apparently wrong, do souls make sense of it all? Or at least have fun trying? Gear up, friends, for Chicken and the Dog. Welcome to another episode of Chicken and the Dog. I am the dog, and with me, as always, is the guy that makes people think more than they should. The chicken. What up, Doug?
Merry Christmas. My gift to all of you.
Yeah, and the reason I said that was we're going to jump right. We got a lot to talk about. And I say that every time, but we do have a lot to talk about. There's been a lot that's happened since we last recorded. There's some games that are coming up. We're going to get into those. But most importantly, there's been a lot of craziness that's happened in college football. But before we do all of that, I'm going to back up my opening statement by going straight into the dog barks. For everybody that doesn't know what the dog barks are, man, these are something that we came up with because the comments that we get on our podcast, on this podcast, or the shorts that we put out, whether it's on YouTube, whether it's on TikTok or Instagram or whatever, all the different social media platforms that we're on, we get all these comments, and some of them are really great. We enjoy a lot. We enjoy most of them. Some of them are very insightful. Some of them back up what we say. Some of them give us other perspectives, and we like that as well. We don't feel like we're right 100% of the time, 98 maybe, but I digress on that. But some of these things, man, are so comical and so funny, especially when they go against what we said. And what they're saying really doesn't make any sense. And those are the ones that get to actually make the dog bark. Look, man, we have thousands upon thousands of comments, every week. And so we choose a select few I choose a select few that I find are worthy and sometimes funny. So let's jump into these. So on the last episode, when we were talking about the ACC and what a disappointing year that the ACC had, right? And I started out by saying something, and then you finished it. And this is what this guy says. His name is TAC 6040. Yeah.
Okay.
And this is what it says. Wanted to type exactly what the second guy said. Makes so much sense.
Which one of us is the second guy?
You. He's talking about you.
You're the. There you go. Of course he does.
Yeah. And then this other guy named Same Day. Great name.
I love it.
Yeah, he did say, and it's nothing funny, but he said Georgia Tech and Pitt are better than Virginia. And there may be some truth to that. I may actually be able to get behind that statement and think that maybe that could have been, but I would have to agree. I think everybody in college football, everybody in the world, other than if you are a fan of a certain team that resides in the SEC or in the ACC, I think we can all agree that Miami is the best team in the ACC this year, hands down.
Yeah, and hats off to Virginia for the year that they had. But as it happens in every conference, and it happens every year, there's going to be a team that rises to the top where scheduling can be an asset in that rise. And I think that played a part for Virginia this year. I think they had a favorable schedule. Some of the teams that they played that are historically powerhouses in the ACC had down years this year. And so all the stars aligned for Virginia this year. But yeah, I've got no problem back in that concept that Georgia Tech might have been a better team this year. Pitt might have been a better team this year. We both agree that Miami should have been in their conference championship this year. Point all the fingers you want at Virginia. Duke didn't belong. I mean, even with the championship game win, they still didn't belong there.
No, not at all. This next dog bark, man, was off the one of the shorts that we did. We were just talking about the last several spots that made it, the last several teams that made it into the playoffs. And of course, the hot topic was really the big hot topic was three. It was just three. Everybody talks about three teams: Miami, Notre Dame, and Alabama. And everybody has their own opinion about that. But this one guy, his name is A Brown, said Bama should not be in there. We all see how these playoffs go, sir. Maybe the SEC will get a championship this year. Sir, I hope you're right. We got 5 of them in there. I hope one of them can pull out a natty. It's a good look for the conference.
So I'm going to assume, because the first part of his statement is that Alabama didn't deserve to be in there. And we know some Bama fans that don't believe that Alabama should be in there. However, I'm going to make a wild assumption that maybe, is it AAA Brown?
AAA.
AAA is a Notre Dame guy. And maybe after the whole arguments against Miami getting in failed, that, well, now you're just going to take out your angst against Bama. I don't know that to be the case, but I will say this. Alabama squeaked in. But one of the things that I agree with when it comes to the concept of Alabama getting in is I don't believe that losing in a championship game should drastically penalize you from getting into the playoffs. Does that mean that Alabama should have held serve at number 9? Maybe not. But the whole thing about Notre Dame, like, hey, you don't play a conference championship. So, yeah, you got shown the door. And Miami didn't play in their conference championship. Well, but they beat Notre Dame head to head. So it all, in my opinion, it all evened out the way that it should have. Say what you want about the rankings the week before, and maybe they were trying to keep things, more secretive than they should. Maybe the committee should be more transparent in their rankings as they go along, but whatever.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. I think that, like I said, the biggest team that didn't get in, that in my opinion had the biggest legitimate argument was Notre Dame, and I could see it all the way around. I see Alabama side, I see Notre Dame side, I see Miami. If you ask me, I think Miami, out of the 3 teams, Miami has a more legitimate argument of being in than Notre Dame or Alabama. The other 2, you just have to kind of weigh which one it is. But and with that being said, there's a guy named Ryan Brumfield. Now, Ryan is a Notre Dame fan because he opens up with that. He goes, as a Notre Dame fan, if they force us into a conference, I pray it isn't the SEC. Now, he doesn't elaborate on that.
Right. First of all, let's take a step back. I don't see a college football world. And this is on the heels of the Armageddon-ridden world that we're in right now of college football. But I don't see a college football world where the NCAA forces Notre Dame into a conference. I can't see that happening. But let's just say that happens. Someone pushes the red button and launches Notre Dame into a conference. Too many rivalries exist for Notre Dame that live in the Big Ten. I mean, Notre Dame goes up against the hated Southern Cal. Notre Dame goes up against Purdue. My mind is this. I think they got something going on with Michigan State, for crying out loud. I mean, there's just, and that's geographic, right? I mean, like, that's Notre Dame is up there in Indiana. The Big Ten, for the most part, is up there in the northern Midwest of our great country. So there are natural rivalries that exist. The only way to keep those going would be to put them in the Big Ten. Notre Dame is already somewhat associated with the ACC, so maybe a second option would be shoving them over there. But again, I don't see that ever happening to force Notre Dame. If Notre Dame goes into a conference, it will be because Notre Dame wants to go into a conference. but I just don't see that.
Yeah, and I think this is a great time for me to mention this. And I was going to mention a different time of the show, but I think this is actually more fitting. And you and I have had this conversation. I met a guy last week, right after they announced the playoffs schedule. Boom, I had to fly to Denver, and so I'm in the Atlanta airport and getting ready to board. And there's a guy right beside me, and he's got a Notre Dame hat on. I said, what a perfect opportunity for me to see the perspective face to face of a Notre Dame fan. What's his perspective on this? And so I asked him, I said, hey, man, I said, I got a podcast. We mainly talk about SEC football, but it's all about college football. As a Notre Dame fan, as I see you wearing a hat, he goes, yes. And I said, what do you feel about what happened with the playoff committee? And he says, look, man, he goes, I see all sides. I get it. He says, the only argument that I have is I wish they would have set that precedent 2 weeks ago when they had us above Miami. They should have never had us above Miami if they were gonna flip flop it without someone playing that extra game. There's no games played. He goes, that's my only concern. And I said, look, man, I said, I think that is a legitimate argument, and I would have to agree with you as well.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't disagree with. I think this is one of those situations where we can all agree that it just didn't work out the way any of us thought it would. I can see Miami's side. I can see Notre Dame's side. Miami beat Notre Dame head to head. Okay, yeah, I get that. Notre Dame had 2 losses in the beginning of the season, and then they ran the table. And so when we're talking about the rankings, Miami looked really strong, and then they would stub their toe, and then Miami would look really strong again, and then they would falter a little bit. So you kind of get the fluctuation for the committee in where they were going to put Miami. Again, as much of an apologist for the SEC as we are, I think I think if you want to look at somebody as you took our spot, that maybe it should be Alabama that took Notre Dame's spot, because you can make valid arguments for both Notre Dame and Miami. There is a valid argument for Alabama because they, out of the 3, played in a conference championship game, lost to Georgia. It wasn't close. It was ugly for Alabama that night. So I think if anybody deserved to take a hip check and get out of the way, it probably should have been the Tide in this scenario. But we have what we have.
But it's, we said it on the last show, man. And I've had many conversations since that committee released those things with, just all different types of people. Matter of fact, I've traveled 2 weeks now since that's happened, and talked to different people as I travel. And I go back to the same thing that you brought up in that last episode, man, which was strength of record. They looked at strength of record. And if you look at any of the teams, if you got to look at those 3 teams, the Miami, the Notre Dame, and the Alabamas of them, who has the better win? And it's Alabama. They beat Georgia in Athens. So it's strength of record, and I think that played a factor in it. And I don't think it's because it's Alabama. No, I think it has to. I think that game had everything to do with it.
Yeah, well, and again, getting back to strength of record, you look at Notre Dame. They lost head to head against Miami. Yes, they did, and then they lost head to head against Texas A&M. So when given these opportunities, the Irish just didn't show up with their best resume. Were they a qualified applicant? Absolutely. But unfortunately for this, there were a lot of qualified applicants.
Is Notre Dame, or would Notre Dame be a dangerous team in the playoffs? I think so.
For sure. And I think, too, if you eliminated the caveat of, the highest ranking conference champion, which is what brought us James Madison. My best to the Dukes. Y'all had a great year. Congratulations. But even though you haven't played your opening round game yet, your season's over.
Oh, yeah.
If you have Notre Dame in that spot, well, they could make a run. James Madison is not going to make it. We'll get into that later on, but again, that there are just different aspects of this whole setup that really is it's more than just losing head to head against Miami. That's where everybody wants to settle in on as far as how Notre Dame got left out, but there's more to it than that. You got what you got. Welcome to the playoffs.
That's it, man. And next year, what do you always say? There's always next year.
There's always next year.
Yeah.
We're all Gamecocks at heart.
This next one is off of the short. This will be the last dog bark, so we can move on. But this next one was when this part of the podcast. Sorry, I'll speak at some point. Where we were talking about the games, the Georgia game, the SEC championship game between Georgia and Alabama. We were talking about that. And, of course, Alabama fans do not like – first of all, they don't like to lose, but nobody likes to lose. But if they lose, they don't like anybody talking about it, and they dang sure don't want – they dang sure are going to find excuses why they lost. It happens every time I talk to somebody from Alabama that pulls for the Tide, and right after a loss, they have the best excuse in the world why they lost. And so here they come. Sacks shouldn't count as rushing yards. Not saying Georgia didn't dominate the trenches, but if being real, the only reason it's -3 is because of sacks. Sorry, buddy. They count.
I mean, okay. Do we? Even when he had time, Ty Simpson had his worst game. So if he hadn't been sacked so many times, we could have run the. No, it was your worst game of the year, and it translated as it should have into a loss. Georgia didn't have that night because listen, we talked about it earlier in the season. In Athens, you beat the Georgia Bulldogs, right? So let's give due its day, and you had it earlier in the year. But Georgia, I mean, Georgia played a great game, but they didn't necessarily have to because Alabama just didn't play well that night, and it happens. I mean, we've talked about it throughout this whole season, and other than Indiana, it's harder and harder to go through a 12-game regular season schedule and be undefeated, especially in the SEC, and then to have to play that additional 13th game if you are so lucky to get into the conference championship matchup. You're gonna fall down, and Alabama fell down. Negative yards due to sacks or not, nice try, but to me it's one of those when you present facts and truth and logic to some people. I don't want to talk to you anymore. Why? Because I make sense. Apparently, that's all it is. That's all they're doing. I don't want to talk about it anymore. We're focused on the playoffs. Okay, sure you are.
And look, you're right. I mean, if they didn't count the negative, if they didn't count the yards from sacks, you wouldn't be in the negative. I will 100% agree with you on that. But if you got rid of that, you still would have only had 25 yards on the ground.
Well, but here's the thing that, and I don't want to say, I want to make a comment about the public school system in the state of Alabama, but I won't. If you're 1st and 10 and your quarterback gets dropped for even just 3 yards, are we going to call it 2nd and 10? No, we're going to call it 2nd and 13. So we've got to put those yards somewhere. You went backwards, dude. Like that's how that works. And we got to put it somewhere. Just because you don't like the statistic or the naming of the statistic doesn't change the fact that while a potential runner, being the quarterback, held onto the ball, he got dropped behind the line of scrimmage. That is a net negative yard play. It wasn't an incomplete pass. Like we got to do something with it, Bama. I don't know what you want to hear here. But to borrow your fight phrase, roll on. Let's roll past it, Ty. Can
Yeah.
we do that?
You know what they call that? Math.
It's math. It's
It's
math.
just math. It's just
Yes.
math. All right, so here's the next one. And I told you, man, Bama fans, they're something special. I love them. I've got several friends that I consider them my brothers that are diehard Roll Tide all the way. And so I love them, but boy, their fandom ship comes out when they lose. This guy named John, just John. First of all, top guy said we never had great running game all year. We were also on our third string running back. Top guy was you. Y'all ran the ball well, but we're out two of our best D linemen. Other than a few chunk plays, y'all really didn't dominate like the score says.
Didn't have to, but I digress.
BSTD at the end. Bunch of drop and turnovers by Bama. You ready for this statement? Y'all ain't that good. Or y'all ain't all that.
Okay. Y'all
Okay.
ain't all that. I mean, for who's we're not all that, or Georgia's not all that?
Georgia's not all that.
Oh, well, for John, if I may be so direct, since you didn't give me anywhere else to go, I was told that Bama didn't have that great of a running game by a Bama fan. So let's just strike that part. Your own Church of Bama would disagree with you on that. The second thing is, I'm not a Georgia fan. In fact, I outright hate them. if it wasn't for my good friend the Dawg, I'd just as soon Athens burned to the ground. Like that's just how I am about the whole thing. But I digress. I'm not a Georgia apologist. I'm not a Bama apologist. I'm a Gamecock fan. So I saw this one with complete objectivity. And you do almost bring yourself to conversion when you talk about some dropped passes and some bad calls. Yeah, you lost, dude. Your team lost. And yes. I was going to say this a minute ago, but I didn't want to take anything away from the victors, which are the Georgia Bulldogs. They didn't have to play their best game that night because you lost it for yourself. I don't remember exactly what the scenario. I think it was 4th and 2, and you're deep. Bama is deep in their own territory, and the game's not out of hand yet. Like you're losing, but it's not like we're driving nails in the coffin by any stretch. And you go for it on 4th and 2.
Not a good look.
It was already an instant. I don't know if DeBoer was like, well, I mean, maybe the urgency of 4th and 2 will it'll get our offense in gear or something. I don't know what the reasoning for his call on that was, but you go for it on 4th and 2 deep in your own territory. Wow. Like Bama lost that game. We can make Bama lost, Georgia didn't win, blah, blah, whatever. Who cares? You lost the championship. One way or the other, net, you lost.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And here's my last comment. And the only reason I bring it up is because it is a repeated comment. We've heard this before, not by this guy, but by someone else.
Regurgitated.
Yeah, it's a regurgitated comment. And here's what it says. Cade, the tractor guy.
Okay, Cade.
All right. I wonder if he has a green tractor. I don't know.
Well, could be orange. You never know.
Never know. I doubt it's red because if it was red, he would have agreed with my comments and wouldn't say this. Here's the comment. Podcast equipment is too cheap. I love it.
And yet Cade is only making comments and he's not podcasting himself. Cade, tractor guy, thanks for listening.
Yeah. I appreciate it. And can we all agree that tractors are not cheap?
Tractors are not cheap.
No, they're not cheap.
No.
Not like podcast equipment.
Not like podcast equipment. And from my understanding, because I don't spend a lot of time on tractors, they do a lot of the work for you now.
I know.
So that gives Cade more time to pay attention to us while he's sitting in the tractor.
You know what we call that?
On the tractor. I don't know what Cade does with his tractor. So maybe his is not a full cab. He's just, maybe Cade rides a lawn tractor for the state.
I don't know. But we call that glass half full.
Glass half full, right.
That's right.
Cade, you wouldn't have anything to do other than listen to us if we couldn't have afforded the podcast equipment. What would you be doing, Cade?
Yeah.
So you're welcome. Let's take that. Let's spin it out. Thank God podcast equipment is as affordable as it is so that we could give you something to do while you're on the tractor.
It's that simple.
Merry Christmas, Cade.
That's right. In the spirit of Christmas, there you go.
There you go.
All right. So I got a few more things I want to talk about before we get into the games that are happening in a couple of days. And I'm just going to come out and say it the way that I feel it. What the hell is going on with college football? It is an absolute train wreck. It is getting worse by the day. And I don't know if it's because NIL, transfer portal, bad coaches, whatever it is, it's getting awful. And I'm just going to mention two things and then let you go off. Notre Dame and Diego Pavia.
Yeah, we've all been to raucous parties that maybe got out of hand. And thank God it wasn't at our house because we didn't have to clean up after. But for the people who owned that venue and they're cleaning up the next morning, maybe they're a little hungover, maybe they've got the early morning shakes themselves and they're recalling, oh yeah, I remember when Tom did this over here and that's what broke the chair and, you know, whatever. And you're cleaning all the things up and the plates and the cups and the empty bottles and the lampshade that's got a hole in it now. And then you look over in the corner and you're like, oh, sweet Mary, that's where so-and-so vomited. And now you got that. That's what I think is happening with college football right now. We had such a great run for such a long time. And when NIL came in and transfer portal and all this stuff, and we knew there was going to be cleaning up to do, and we were waiting for the dust to settle, like this is all going to even out, and then enter Diego Pavia, and it's the vomit in the corner. Then no one wants to clean up because we didn't do it. We held our liquor.
That's right.
The Pavias are, and I'm basing this off of some pictures of when he was entering into, I think it was the Heisman arena, the announcement, and it looked like he and his brothers were ready to introduce the Pavia cartel to New York, like a bunch of wannabe Goodfellas, the circus that they are. Unfortunately, I guess, depending on where you land on this, there weren't any tables for his mother to dance on that night, at least at the downtown Heisman Club. She couldn't find a guardrail to shimmy on. I don't know. I don't even know if mom went. Maybe they said, listen, this is a little too much for you. Just stay here. We'll come back with the Coke and the rum later, and we'll have our own party. The whole thing about his mouthing off his true feelings, let's be honest, his true feelings about losing the Heisman Trophy. And I don't want to get caught up in whether or not Fernando Mendoza deserved to win it or not. You know what? The way that he handled himself, I give it to him 10 times out of 10 over Diego Pavia any day. I heard it put best by one of the Heisman voters. After Diego issued his apology about his comments saying, you know what, that's just who this guy is. And you would think that, albeit he considers himself to be a Johnny Manziel acolyte. Johnny Manziel was 19 when he acted the fool all throughout college football. Diego Pavia is 93 years old. He should have learned by now that, and I think the way the voter put it is, you would have thought that after all the time he spent in school, he could have taken one class in humility. You would think that he could just conduct himself. I mean, let's all be honest. He played his way into consideration for the NFL this upcoming draft. He played his way there. However, actions have consequences. Behavior has consequences. I heard another podcaster talk, and he's an apologist for Pavia. Well, all this self-imposed moral standards, blah, 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 just apologizing for Diego, shut up. How you conduct yourself amongst the rest of us matters. We take that into consideration. Fans of the New York Jets, maybe not so much. They stink on ice. They'll probably take anybody. Hell, I could probably try out for the Jets next week, and they might at least give me a shot. I can't throw the ball that far, so don't call me. But I'm just saying, beggars can't be choosers, so certain teams will give Pavia a look. Other teams, where it matters how their quarterback behaves, not going to look at this kid. We've seen other higher prospects in the NFL draft, and I'm not going to make mention because it's happened more than just once. It wasn't just last year, but we've seen high prospects tumble in the draft. Why? I don't know. I'm not part of those meetings, and neither are you. But let's not dismiss the fact that those interviews that they have with these guys that they're considering matter. The way that these gentlemen conduct themselves, and whether or not they conduct themselves like a gentleman, it matters. Diego Pavia looks like he's trying out for Goodfellas Part 3, the sequel that nobody wanted.
Absolutely. And you mentioned it, but you said you weren't going to say because there's been multiple people. I'm just going to say it. It reminds me, and if anybody, he should have looked at what happened last year. Shedeur Sanders and his lack of humility caused him to fall in the draft as far as he did. Does Shedeur have skills? Without a doubt. Boy, he's got a lot of talent, and I think he has still, if he does correctly, the opportunity to make a good NFL career if he can check himself. Pavia has to check himself, and he didn't do it. And if this is what paying players looks like, college football, the NCAA needs to really reconsider what they're doing with this money, man, because they are creating 18, 19, 93-year-old babies is what they're doing. And I don't like it. And it's really ruining the sport of college football. Pavia is not the only person that's doing that, that's ruining college football. Notre Dame. Forget that, yeah, I know you're upset that you didn't make it. But to say, that's it, I'm not playing in a bowl game and making a stance, that is the most selfish. It's just an awful look, and if I'm not going to get my way, I don't want to play, and that just, it is bad for the sport.
Go back, and I agree. First off, I agree, but I will go back. I think it was 2005, maybe 2006, where Georgia just missed getting to play for a national championship that year. Georgia had an unbelievable team. Matthew Stafford at quarterback, Noshawn Moreno, an electric running back, a defense that probably could have won several wars in the Middle East had they wanted to. They were just that big, that bruising, that talented, that fast, but didn't get to the top of the mountain that they had aimed for. And that's what was going on this year with Notre Dame. They were aiming for that playoff spot, that shot at a natty. You had a couple of early setbacks, like we said, but that was the mountaintop. Georgia that particular year ends up getting paired up, I believe it was the Sugar Bowl, against Hawaii, who had had an equally impressive season, although in the whack, with Colt Brennan. Colt Brennan was a Heisman finalist that year because he had electrified defenses in the whack. But anyway, I digress. It was a much anticipated bowl matchup of two teams that just didn't quite make it, and Georgia made a spectacle of Colt Brennan and the Rainbow Warriors that night and absolutely ran through them, as we say in the South, like a hot knife through butter. It was as though Hawaii didn't show up, like they might have missed the flight. It was that bad. Georgia proved a point in a game that they felt that they were better than, and so they showed it on the field. Notre Dame had opportunity to do that this offseason, to do that for their fans, to generate excitement about next year, to do that for their recruits, to generate excitement about next year. But instead, they chose to pout and take their ball and go home. Now, let's get into the reality of that decision. Notre Dame's not hurting for money, so let's go ahead and put that understanding out there. However, Notre Dame doesn't have to share bowl revenue with anybody. Why? Because remember, they're not in a conference. So all the money that would have been generated through merchandise sales, ticket sales, ad revenue from television, from whatever bowl game that they would have been in, is now going somewhere else. It's not going to South Bend. Notre Dame is going to have, at least at the running back position, guys that need to step up and be the man next year. Well, guess what else happens when you don't go to a bowl game? Your season, including practice, is done.
Yeah.
Your football players packed up their lockers and went back to their dorm rooms or home for fall break, Christmas break, whatever. They're not practicing. That's an extra month at minimum that you're missing from not participating in a bowl game. Why? Because your feelings got hurt.
Yeah.
I wonder what the Big Gipper and Newt Rockne would have had to say about it. Has anybody asked Lou Holtz? Because Lou Holtz, even though he left and went on to coach at other places, Lou Holtz is still a Notre Dame guy through and through. Loves his Gamecocks when he came down here to coach us, but he's a Notre Dame guy. I wonder what Coach Holtz has to say about that. I wonder if Coach Holtz would have said, we're not going to play. We're going to go home and think about this. I think that this was a massive disservice to the players. Playing in a bowl game, whether you're in the playoffs or not, is a reward for a season well fought. I wonder what it says to the fans that you don't get to watch your Irish anymore this year. You get to wait till next year. You went 10-2 in the regular season. Just as a comparison, the South Carolina Gamecocks went 4-8. And guess what, fans? They're all sitting home this bowl season.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder what the boosters for Notre Dame think about them not playing an extra game. I'm sure they're upset that they didn't get it, and we're not going to go back to that conversation because we have already had that. But I wonder what they're. Wait a minute. I want to play in this bowl game because, I want to see my team. I gave you this much money to be able to watch my team play. And now you're denying me. I know that the AD has been interviewed a couple different times, and I think the more he opens his mouth, the worse they just look. And it's just not a good look for Notre Dame. Will it? And then now the relationship between them and the ACC, because this guy he's mad because the ACC was fighting for Miami to get their shot. And he's mad about that. Why? Makes no sense to me, because does the ACC benefit at all? Monetary or prestige award, anything like this. Does the ACC benefit at all if Notre Dame is in the playoffs? No, they do not.
So, and that's the thing. The comments that he's made since his initial I don't want to play comments have been backpedaling in nature and with the rankings. Well, they shouldn't have had us ranked where we were, and the committee should have done this. And oh, by the way, there's a secret memo that nobody knew about, that if we're ranked here in this week, then we automatically get a spot in the playoffs. And is that true? I don't know, and I don't care. They left you out. Shut up. But then the other part of, well, the ACC championed Miami, and we're kind of in the ACC, just not in football. Well, what the? Of course they're going to pull from. If you were in the ACC, full-fledged member of the conference, they would have had your back, but you don't want to because you're Notre Dame.
Yeah.
And so they're going to go for their guy. Miami is their guy. They're going to back their guy. Why? Because of this right here. They want that revenue that you just now walked away from anything. So, I mean, you made a bad call. You made a sore loser call. You made a bad sport call by saying we're not going to play anything. And now you're trying to justify it, and it's only getting worse. You mentioned a minute ago about college football needs to step in and clean all this stuff up. I don't think it's going to be overnight, but money talks and other things walk.
Mm-hmm.
And the boosters are the ones that are fueling this sport. And enough bridges get burned by, in my opinion, bad athletic director decisions of a Notre Dame, or by certain players acting the fool and making their school. This is Vanderbilt, by the way. This is not just your run-of-the-mill, we'll take anybody to win. This is Vanderbilt, right? There's still a certain presence about Vanderbilt. They are considered to be a high academic standard school. That's the clown that you want repping your school.
Yeah.
Is walking around in his Mexican cartel chains and things. I mean, get over yourself. Buy a tie, Diego. You got the cash. But these things will be regulated out eventually by the pocketbooks of the boosters. And they will tell certain schools, we're willing to pay this, but we're not willing to pay it for that.
That's right.
And if that's what you're going to do, then we'll find a new coach or we'll find a new athletic director that brings us back to what we want. We're Notre Dame fans. Yeah, we want national championships, but we certainly don't want to sit at home in December and January.
Yeah, they want these other teams, these boosters of these other schools and whatever. They're going to look at teams like Ohio State. They're going to look at teams like Georgia and teams like Alabama that carry themselves a certain way. And they're going to say, I want my program like those programs. I want it to be about the game, the sport, the fans and putting it out there and playing hard. I don't want it to be about, like you say, the OG, triple OG Mexican cartel guys. If I'm not going to get my way, dang it, I'm not going to play no more. Notre Dame. They don't want that anymore. And so you mentioned it, and we'll move on after this, but you mentioned this a minute ago, and I loved what you said. I mean, I absolutely, because I think it's on point. Because Notre Dame said, I'm not going to play in a bowl game, and they would have got a really great bowl. A Reliaquist Bowl, I think is what it was. They were saying it was something it was a New Year's Six bowl, period. And so they would have had a whole month to practice, like you said, and then a game to play in as well. And what they did is they not only denied their fans, but they denied their program. Because their top two running backs, Jeremiah Love and the guy that's right below him, have already declared for the draft. So now, who's sitting behind them? Do they really know who's sitting behind them? Are they that deep? Do they know, well, what we got is not that good? Do we need to jump into the portal? Do we need to flex our Notre Dame muscle in the portal and go get some great running back that's at another school? They don't know that now because they denied themselves that knowledge. And I think that's absolutely. Now, speaking of transfer portal, not a shock. And I think more's coming. But DJ Lagway, adios. He's gone. He's leaving Florida. where he'll go. Will there be a team that's going to take a gamble on this kid, because he did show flashes of greatness from time to time? No doubt about that. Was it his fault that they lost some of those games and that that he was inconsistent and played like this? Was that him? Was that coaching? Was that the squad around him? I don't know, but guess what? He's going to get his chance to show his skills somewhere else. The next one, and like you said earlier offline, not a shocker, Dylan Raiola from Nebraska. He's out. He's gone. I didn't know this until you mentioned it. They fired his uncle that was on staff. And so what do you expect? He's going to go. And I think Raiola's brother was committed to Nebraska. I'm sure that has changed as well.
If it hasn't changed, it just hasn't been announced. Let's just put it that way. Yeah, but I mean, this is the nature now of college football, and this part I don't think will change, especially when you've got a situation like Lagway has, where there's a coaching change, and that's one of the things that we keep hearing about of why the transfer portal is important. If there's a coaching change and that player and coach don't see eye to eye, whatever it may be, from some of the things that I've heard, Lagway wanted to stay at Florida, so good for him. And I think that that's a boon for him in the transfer market, is that other schools could say this kid wasn't just looking to jump just because. Apparently, whatever meetings they had created an environment where Lagway thought, well, okay, I wanted to be here, but I can't. Now, was that because of schemes that the new offense was going to be around versus what Lagway wants to be in? Who knows? Kudos to both sides of that discussion, that neither one is saying why it didn't work out. They're just saying it didn't work out. Lagway is going to end up somewhere. Will it be Miami? Will Raiola end up in Miami? Because it looks like Miami's going to be that school that, at least for the next few years, is going to be, all right, cool. Beck's gone. Who's out there now that we can hire for a quick run at the ACC and a quick run in the playoffs? That's kind of where Miami is now. Maybe they bring somebody in and they develop them up a little bit, and next year's different. But I don't see it happening yet. But a couple of big names, just not only in the portal itself, but in the quarterback position.
Absolutely. And, there's been speculations about, with Dylan Raiola, because at one point he was committed to Georgia. He was committed to Ohio State, decommitted to Ohio State, committed to Georgia, and actually moved to the state of Georgia to complete his senior year of high school playing in Georgia football to get acclimated to the area, and then decided to change and go to Nebraska, probably because his uncle, and I get it, whatever. A lot of people are saying, will he come? Will Georgia bring him on? And my answer is no. Because Dylan Raiola is going to want to come someplace and start day one. That's going to be his goal, and I don't blame the kid. He should. He's a talented young man. I don't see Gunnar Stockton leaving Georgia after this season. I think he comes back for another year. And so far, what he has proved at Georgia, I don't think anybody's going to knock him off of from being under center. It's not going to happen. It's Gunnar Stockton. So I don't see him coming back to Georgia. Could Lane Kiffin take him into LSU? No?
I don't see that happening. I think if we're just going to kind of look at Southeastern landing spots, like I said, I see Miami as a potential spot. Now that Lagway's leaving Florida could be a potential landing spot. I don't see that Raiola has demonstrated enough that Lane Kiffin's going to say, yeah, you're going to be my guy here at LSU. I think that there are going to be some other guys that Kiffin looks at because he's going to want to hit the ground running to the playoffs.
Correct.
In Baton Rouge. He doesn't want to spend a lot of time having to develop again and again and again. If he wanted to do that, he could have stayed at Ole Miss. I think Lane is chasing playoffs, plural, and championships, plural, and he's chasing them day one. So I don't see that. Auburn is a spot. Maybe Oklahoma is a spot that Raiola looks at. And listen, it could be anywhere.
It could.
You look at again, modern college football money talks. So who needs a quarterback bad enough that they're willing to give Raul a good look? And to your point, not just a good look because we need a body on the field, but you're going to be our guy. We're looking at you because you're going to be QB1.
Yeah. Now, speaking of quarterbacks, we probably should have opened up with this, and I'm going to let you take this over, um, and give the guy a proper salute that he deserves, being that you are a Carolina fan. We had a famous, a very well known, very beloved South Carolina quarterback, lost his battle to cancer this week, and I didn't watch this guy like you did. I mean, you follow this guy. You actually went to school with this guy, and so I'm gonna let you just kind of give him a tribute.
I appreciate that. I did. I went to school with Steve Tannehill in the same sense that everybody that was on campus in those days went to school with him. I did have a class that Steve was in, and Steve was the quintessential quarterback off the field, meaning that he came into class, he plopped down in the back, he did his thing. I don't know if he was paying attention or not, and then he left. Steve Tannehill defined South Carolina football during his time in the Garnet and Black. He came in during a troubling time for the program, not long after the loss of famous head coach Joe Morrison, who was doing a lot of great things at South Carolina. Steve Tannehill came in to play for Sparky Woods. Sparky started off Steve's freshman year at 0-5 and a player revolt looking to get rid of Sparky. And then basically in a, well, we haven't played this kid yet move, Steve Tannehill, number 18, the mullet-wearing quarterback from Altoona, Pennsylvania, took the reins and electrified a fan base like none other. At that time, South Carolina was pretty much a full-on joke. There are still some fans out there in the SEC that'll tell you that South Carolina is still a joke to them, albeit there's been great success in the conference. But at that time, South Carolina was a joke. Opening up at 0-5 is no great challenge to that number. However, Steve Tannehill took those reins and led that team back from an 0-5 start to a 5-6 finish, losing probably the closest loss ever to Florida in the second half of that season. Had they beaten the Gators, they lost 14-9, but had they beaten the Gators, they would have been bowl eligible after an 0-5 start. Steve Tannehill was the guy that wore his attitude like he wore his helmet and his jersey, and it was out there for everyone to see. His arm did things that you never expected this guy to be able to do. One of my favorite recollections of Steve Tannehill was, I believe it was his senior year in Georgia, second possession, our starting center goes down with a broken ankle, and a true freshman comes into play. And Steve looks across at this freshman and says, "Get me the ball, give me 3 seconds, and I'll do the rest." And according to this freshman player, Paul Beckwith is his name, that transferred all of Steve's confidence. That by that time, again, Steve's a senior, so he had built up a tremendous amount of confidence in himself, in the fan base that supported him. But it transferred Steve's confidence into Paul Beckwith. And Carolina went on to win that game in Athens. What a leader. What a player. What a Gamecock. Steve Tannehill went on to have a head coaching career in high school sports, I believe totaling 6 state championships, 3 at I believe it's Calhoun County. I could be wrong. And then another 3 in 8-man football at Cambridge Academy. Gave himself to the sport of football, gave himself to the area of Columbia. Steve was a partner in several businesses in Columbia, so it wasn't I graduate and leave and go home. Home became Gamecock country for Steve Tannehill. Forever to thee, number 18, you will always be in our hearts. And in the era of Diego Pavia, I certainly wish there were more Steve Tannehills.
Yeah, look, our hearts and our prayers go out to Steve's family. And just know that the chicken and the dog are praying for you guys and through this difficult time. And I hope you find peace. And that peace, the true peace, can only come from one source. And I hope you look to him for that peace and comfort. All right, we got games to talk about, and we're long-winded already, but I got to mention this one last thing because it's been it's been the talk, man, for several days now. And what the heck is going on in Michigan?
You play stupid games, you win stupid prizes. Yeah, this came out of nowhere. With all the coaching changes, you know that Michigan is at least thinking, God, we wish that we would have known about this sooner. Um, bad call. Bad call by Sharon Moore. I feel for Sharon. We talk about it all the time. Jesus won. There's a reason that Jesus had to win is because we are all sinners.
That's right.
And none of us more or less than the other. Sharon got caught up in some bad decisions, and it led down a spiral. Took him to where he is. My heart goes out to him. My heart goes out to his wife and 3 daughters. You're looking at a total of 5 lives at minimum that are just in complete shambles right now, and trying to figure out amongst the mess of where you can at least put your foot down and stand up. My heart goes out to the Michigan fans who didn't ask for any of this. They just wanted to see their football team back on track. But it is what it is. Michigan is now going to be looking for another head coach. I can't remember the gentleman's name, but he filled in for Sharon earlier in the season in an interim role when he was serving a suspension for his role in Stallion Gate or whatever you want to call it. Maybe he'll get elevated to the top position. If he does, I hope all goes well. But I think in reality, we would all know that it's because there's a lack of options out there right now on the carousel. But yeah, what a wild ride. And Sharon Moore, to his coaching credit, if you just look at it through that lens, he was looking like he was going to be a really good head coach, not only in general, but at Michigan. It looked like they had found a really great fit for their program and their environment there. But again, bad decisions upon bad decisions led us to where we are. So I think that while we all think of the Moore family and our prayers go out to all of them and hope that whatever sorts out, they do it for all of the right reasons. But we hope that that gets sorted out and fixed, and that, somehow or another relationships can be mended. Man, you got to find a way to get through it and go big blue.
Yeah, I mean it's a very tragic. The whole situation is just awful. I mean, it just is. And so, but I think you hit the nail on the head. And in a world of social media, in a world where people hide behind these things or computers, and they say whatever they want to say, but they would never say things like that to someone's face. I think my hope and my prayer is that people will rally up behind this man, and because his sin it made him make some bad choices. Does it make him an awful person? No, it just makes him. He made a mistake, just like we all do, and he just got caught up in something that he shouldn't have. Do I think that he should be held accountable for those? Absolutely. I don't think he should get off scot-free. I don't think Michigan should hire him back and give him his job back. I don't think that at all. But I hope that America or the college football, the Michigan fan base and everyone else just comes behind this man and say, look, you made a mistake. You're going to have to pay for it, but this doesn't define who you become. and move forward. And that's what that's my biggest hope with this guy. And look, same thing with Diego Pavia. I hope somehow Diego Pavia can find some um some humility, some Jesus, and change his ways, because he is a very he's a great athlete, and he has the ability to do a lot of good for a lot of people, including himself, if he will just, um, like it says, deny self and take up my cross, right? Not to get too religious on the show, but I mean, I think at the end of the day, that's why it's in the Bible, is because we will, if we get in the way and we put ourselves first, bad things usually happen. And that's what happened in Michigan. The guy put his wants and his needs before himself. I mean, not before himself, but before his family and whatever. And it just didn't turn out well. So now,
That's the thing that I really want to remember before we make the transition is I don't want it to be overlooked. I mean, obviously, all the news is about what he did, whether or not he's still in lockup right now for protective reasons. I don't know where he sits right now, if he's at home or whatever. Home being a fluctuating word, I'm sure. But the fact that he's married and he's got 3 daughters is, and it should be, written as a stat line almost in the box score of his life. But I don't want it to just be limited to that. All of our thoughts and prayers are to his wife, to his daughters, because the man that they thought that they understood and the man that they thought they knew, that's been torn away. Those relationships can be repaired,
correct,
or not. That's not up to us to decide for them. They've got to work through that, but there's a long road ahead in however that relationship defines itself. There's a long road ahead for that family, and hope and pray that they make it through all of that
for sure,
as best they can.
For sure. All right, let's get into some games.
All right,
let's because there's some good ones, man. So on Friday, December 19th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, a 10-3 number 9 Alabama has to go to Norman, Oklahoma, and take on a number 8 10-2 Oklahoma Sooners. OU is favored by 1.5 points, which that they're pretty much calling this thing a push. The over and under is 39.5, so they don't see a whole lot of scoring going on. Sorry, Senior Chief. I love you to pieces. Uncle Si, you're my dude. But I'm going with Oklahoma. I think Oklahoma wins. I think Norman, Oklahoma is going to be the difference in this game. And maybe even the chatter with Alabama doesn't deserve in this, and maybe that has gotten in some of the locker room. I don't know, but I just got a feeling that Oklahoma wins this game.
I think that any chatter that comes into Alabama that is not pro-Bama is a lot like any chatter about Notre Dame. If it ain't pro-Notre Dame, they're not listening. Same thing here with the Crimson Tide. It would only serve to fuel these guys. I think the loss to Georgia and the way they lost to Georgia has only served to fuel this team. I think Ty Simpson comes back and rights the ship, and I think that Bama comes out and wins this game.
They could. I did hear a rumor that maybe Jam Miller might be back for this game. I don't know if that's true or not. That's the rumor mill right now, but it should be an absolute fun game to watch. And if Oklahoma wins, if I am right, then Alabama would have to call Oklahoma daddy, because that'll be 3 in a row.
Yeah.
That'd be 3 in 2 years.
And again, that didn't factor into my call on this, but I just don't see that happen.
Maybe not.
Too much pride in that Tide.
Ooh, there's a lot. All right, so here's another game that, Oklahoma and Alabama have already played once this year in Tuscaloosa. Alabama lost that game. All right, here's another game that we've already seen this year, right? And that is a number 11, 2-1 Tulane. That's right, I said Tulane. Has to go face a number 6, 11-1 Ole Miss. Ole Miss is favored by 17.5 points. The over-under is 56.5. I've got Ole Miss, and I've got them big in this game.
Yeah, I think that this is going to be, and they've already made their announcement. I believe their D coordinator is getting elevated to the head coach there at Ole Miss. So there's not going to be that uneasiness about, well, Lane's not here. The vibe in Oxford is going to stay consistent with the coaching staff there, I believe. And I say vibe. There are still going to be some guys that are going to Baton Rouge with Lane. But Ole Miss is still going to be Ole Miss. You've still got the same guys suiting up for the Rebs. I think that they're going to take out Tulane, no problem. And again, just like with James Madison, hats off to Tulane. Great season.
Absolutely.
And your parting gift is a loss in the first round.
Yeah, and look, everybody can sit there and go, well, like you mentioned, the coaching change at Ole Miss and, Lane not there. And will that have – a lot of people are saying that can have a factor. We got to remember, Tulane's head coach is leaving too. Now, he's going to coach this game, but that locker room knows he's going to Florida. So you can't tell me that's not going to play a factor. Absolutely, it's going to play a factor in that as well. I like I said, you got two coaching changes. You got a coach change on both teams. Ole Miss talent level is way superior than Tulane. They beat them, but that won't be the case in the Sugar Bowl. I'm just saying. All right. I jumped ahead, didn't I? So here's another game that I find pretty interesting to watch. Not really. So a 12-1, number 12 JMU. If you don't know what that stands for, I'll go ahead and tell you. James Madison University has to take on a 11-1 number 5 Oregon. They have to play in Eugene, Oregon. Oregon's favored by 21 points. The over-under is 47.5. I'm going to tell you right now, 21 isn't enough. They're going to wax JMU.
Yeah, I like Oregon in this game. I like Oregon's opportunity in the playoff. We've talked about Oregon throughout the season of, well, they're not flashy, like they're not this, they're not that. Well, they're 11-1. And they've quietly, methodically just won football games. They've proved that they don't necessarily need the hype. It's not that big a deal that Bo Nix isn't back there anymore. It doesn't bother them that Dylan Gabriel isn't back there anymore. I don't even know who their quarterback is other than his last name is Moore and he wears number 5. Like that, he's not gotten the hype that we've seen from past Oregon Duck football teams. But Oregon's continued to win. Oregon has proven that they deserve to be there. Oregon is ranked number 5 in the playoff rankings, which is just, hey, we're the best of everybody else that didn't get a first round bye. I think they're going to run through James Madison. I think it's not going to be a problem, and I think they're looking pretty for the second round too.
Absolutely. And that leaves us with one more game to talk about. Yes, there's more bowl games going on, but we didn't feel like this is a time to talk about any of those right now. We've already been a little long-winded, but so we're just going to keep it with the first round of the playoffs. But here's your last game, and it's at noon. It's a noon kick. God, I think it's going to be a fight. I mean, a dog fight. But a 10-2, number 10 Miami Hurricanes has to go to Kyle Field, College Station, Texas, and take on an 11-1, number 7 Texas A&M Fighting Aggies, and A&M is favored by 3.5 points. The over and under is 48.5. I'm going to go ahead and apologize to my buddy John Ekdahl. I love you. I will always support you. But I think Miami wins this game. There's
Wow.
just
Wow.
something about it. If Beck throws to the right helmet, we say that all the time. If he throws to the right helmet, which I think he will, Beck will be the difference maker in this game, and Miami will win.
I'm going to defer you to the logic of my Uncle Kenny. And let's just see what he has to say. Does he support your claims or does he convert you? I don't know. I've never trusted a team that arrives at a playoff game looking refreshed. It feels suspicious, like someone who tells you they just don't sweat. Miami enters this playoff matchup against Texas A&M with clean lines, pressed uniforms, and a resume that reads like it was laminated at a career fair. Texas A&M, by contrast, shows up looking like it's been living out of a suitcase, arguing with strangers, and sleeping poorly for the 3 months, which in college football is usually a good sign. Miami's season has unfolded gently, the way a guided tour unfolds gently, with stops planned in advance and very few surprises. The ACC, bless its heart, has provided an accommodating itinerary. There were moments of mild turbulence, an athletic quarterback here, a clever coordinator there, but nothing that required Miami to question its sense of self. The Hurricanes have not so much been tested as they have been observed, like a rare bird nesting safely behind glass. Texas A&M's season, on the other hand, has been more like being trapped in a group text with the SEC. Every week, another message arrives. Are you up? We're physical. The Aggies have spent their fall being shoved, stretched, booed, and occasionally humbled by a conference that treats emotional comfort as a personal failing. The SEC does not allow you to feel good about yourself for long. It pokes at your weaknesses. It sends linebackers. The ACC's weakness isn't a moral failing. It's more like a personality trait. The league contains talent, intelligence, and ambition, but rarely all at one and the same place. Teams oscillate wildly from impressive to baffling, sometimes within the same drive. Miami's numbers sparkle in this environment, but context matters. Dominance is easier when the opposition politely cooperates. Texas A&M has not enjoyed such courtesy. Their opponents have been larger, angrier, and deeply invested in ruining Saturdays. This matters when projecting how a playoff game will feel once the novelty wears off and the game becomes unpleasant, which is always what happens. Miami's offense thrives in space and confidence. Texas A&M's defense thrives in eliminating both. The Aggies do not rush the passer so much as they introduce him to a lifestyle change. They rotate bodies with enthusiasm of someone cleaning out a freezer. Miami's quarterback, accustomed to clean pockets and reasonable conversations, will be forced into quicker decisions and less flattering body language. I remember how Carson Beck handled SEC defensive lines. Wasn't great. Offensively, Texas A&M has learned restraint the hard way. They've had to win games without perfection, without applause, sometimes without momentum. They have learned to accept 3 yards and move on, to treat field position like a long-term investment. Against SEC defenses, you learn patience or you learn regret. Miami's defense, statistically impressive, has rarely been asked to absorb that kind of slow insistence. It's one thing to stop a drive. It's another to stop 5 of them in a row while being leaned on. There will be moments when Miami looks exactly like Miami is supposed to look: fast, confident, cinematic. Those moments will be celebrated loudly, as they should be. But playoff games are not decided by moments. They are decided by accumulation, by bruises, by 3rd and 4 in the 4th quarter when everyone knows what's coming and you still have to stop it. Texas A&M has been rehearsing for that moment all season. The playoff, like adulthood, has little patience for flattering narratives. It rewards experience, even the unpleasant kind. Miami's path here has been smooth, impressive, and possibly misleading. Texas A&M's path has been cluttered with obstacles and blunt force trauma, which is often how you learn exactly what works. When these teams meet, it won't be about conference pride or historical reputations. It will be about whether Miami can adapt to an environment that refuses to accommodate them, and whether Texas A&M can turn that hard-earned discomfort into composure. If nothing else, one team will leave knowing exactly who they are, and the other will leave knowing that not all journeys are meant to be relaxing. Is this game a 12 o'clock kickoff? 11 for those of you in the Central Time Zone. How many seats in that stadium? Really? What is your favorite Miami win? It looks like we are going to have to endure those dorky cheer dudes for another 2 weeks because the Miami Hurricanes and their swashbuckling quarterback are walking directly into a buzzsaw. And give me Bama, too.
Give me Bama. Of course, Uncle Kenny.
There you go.
All right. What's your thoughts, Sir Chicken?
I agree 100% with my Uncle Kenny on this. I don't look as condescending on the season Miami had, but it wasn't enough to create the maturity, to create the strength of character that I believe that Texas A&M has built throughout this season. I still go back to when they didn't even show up for the first half against South Carolina, and by all rights should have lost that game. But they found a way to come back and not only score points in the second half, but prevent their opponent from doing anything. I think that builds a certain type of a character in a team. They have been through the gauntlet of the SEC. They too beat Notre Dame. I like the Aggies in this one. Scream on.
So Uncle Kenny did not change my mind. And let me make everything clear. I want everybody to understand this. I want A&M to win this game. One, because I like A&M. I like their coach a lot. I think what Elko has done there in year number 2 is just phenomenal. Kirby did not have a good a year in number 2 at Georgia as Elko has had at A&M in year number 2. So, I mean, my hat is off to this coach. I think he's great. I think Reed is a great quarterback. I think A&M has got a really solid team. I really do. And I want them to win. And I have a little bit of bromance for A&M. It was my first college game that I ever went to in College Station. My buddy John took me. So just to be clear, I want A&M to win. But just something inside of me just says that I think that Miami is going to win this game for more than one reason. And maybe it is, if anything, to say we're the ACC and we win. I don't know what my feeling is, why I have it. I just have a feeling that that Miami is going to win this game. I don't think they go past this game, but I think they win this game.
Well, there you go. Again, Rube, sometimes we just have feelings and we go with them.
That's right. Now, there is one other, before we get off, there is one other elephant in the room, and I'm not talking about Alabama, so don't get excited by any means, that I did not mention at the first and that I probably should have as well. There's just been, it's been crazy. It's the holidays. Everybody is like frantic, but happy 100 episode. It is our 100th.
Happy 100.
Yeah, it is our 100th episode with Chicken and the Dog. It's been fun. It's been challenging. You could say the good, the bad, the ugly, whatever it is. But at the end of the day, it has been an absolute honor and a pleasure to do 100 podcasts with you.
As with you, and again, thank goodness this equipment is so doggone cheap.
Absolutely. And look, to all of our fans, Rube, we love you. And it's because of you why we do this.
That's right. Rube, John, Bob, I could go back over so many. I want to thank our sponsors that have brought us to this point, not only Breaking Chains Fitness, but also going back to OTC Kennels. Without your support, I don't know how realistic 100 would have been. I don't know that we would have hit 50. So just kudos to you and buying this cheap equipment.
That's right. And we can't leave off Curtis.
Can't leave off Curtis.
Love the Curtis.
Screaming Curtises.
Yeah. All right, guys. Look, man. Follow us, like us, subscribe to us. Our viewership is growing every day. I get all these notifications. More people subscribing. Leave us comments. You never know. You might make the dog bark. Chicken, you got anything?
Forever to thee, number 18, always, Jesus won. And I'm all crowed out.
All right, guys. Love you. Deuces.